This is John Thorndike from Athens, Ohio, out visiting the gracious Lois Gilbert in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's January 6th, 2014. 71 years old, born in 1942 in New York City, and grew up pretty much in Westport, Connecticut my whole life until I went away to school, a kind of privileged Eastern boarding school life. Went to Deerfield Academy for 4 years in Massachusetts, then went on to Harvard. Didn't know what I was doing. My father was a very successful New York editor at both, first at Time, then Life, then American Heritage and Horizon. In short, when the 60s came around, which is to say almost the 70s, then I threw it all over. I was in a PhD program in the fall of 1969 at NYU. I already taken a master's at Columbia. And I looked at it and I thought, this is just ridiculous. The world was coming apart, and I came apart with it in a wonderful way. And dropped out and got married and went with my very pregnant wife to Chile on the great adventure of my life. It was like living in the 1920s there as far as tractors and such things went in farming. You didn't have any of that. It was just living with the campesinos. But we also went when my son was 5 days from being born. 5 days after we got to the little town of Temuco, the city of Temuco, my son was born. On top of going to Chile and living in a place where we knew no one and moving to a farm that was an hour and a half out in the country that had no running water, no electricity, no automobile. Oh, well, we didn't worry about that, Clarissa and I, out on the farm in near Vilcún, Chile. We just humbled along. Where I once went 8 months without buying anything from a grocery store except for 4 things. Yerba mate, which is an intoxicant like caffeine, and wheat that I had for my chickens, and salt, and oil. Very difficult to live without some kind of oil. But that was all. 8 months, that was the only thing we bought outside of what we grew and produced in our garden. That is living simply. Moved back to the United States, landed in Athens, Ohio, kind of on a fluke, and found a wonderful place to live, to settle down with my 3-year-old son. Bought a farm and started farming there, and farmed for 10 years. Sold at the farmer's market, sold at Kroger's, sold at restaurants around town, and was really devoted to it. It was not a job. I was an organic farmer in the early days when no one cared anything about organics. And I had to take down my organic sign. It wasn't helping business, believe it or not. And then, in that time, I had always wanted to write. I'd been a writer since I was in the 5th grade or something. I wrote stories. I had no confidence. I wrote a little bit when I was in high school, and I wrote a little bit at Harvard. I've seen some of those stories since. It's embarrassing, as early work often is. And then I sat down and I decided I was going to write a novel. And I worked on that book for 7 years. And, while I was farming, in the winter times and when I could. And after 7 years, I found an agent, and the agent took the book to New York and sold the book. And Macmillan published it, published 10,000 copies, and they all sold out. Wow, what a great start. And then I just dropped everything else and I became a writer. Then I saw, I'm not going to be able to keep this up forever. Eventually, I settled down. I started building houses. I built or rehab a house a year for 8 years. And now I own and rent out those 8 houses, 10 units. And so we come to my life today, which I sum up with 3 observations, or rules, or reflections. And the first is that I'm semi-retired. I'm semi-retired leads to the second observation. I do what I feel like. And the third observation or rule is it's a mistake every 5 minutes. Getting older can relax you. And then I have all these other things that I love. And one of them is making videos. Lois Gilbert came along and taught me how to make videos, pretty much. And I started applying it to this. I used to take a bunch of stills for this volleyball team. And now a friend and I were just a couple of fanatics about the Ohio University Bobcat women's volleyball team. This year they had 23 matches. We went to 16 of them. Didn't make it to Oregon, didn't make it to Texas, but lots of other ones. And then I make a video for most every match, and I'm a volleyball player. I mean, that's another thing. What do I like to do? Well, it's volleyball. It goes back. I've been playing volleyball for over 40 years, and actually a good deal longer than that. And I still play. My knees are creaky, but I play every Friday night if I can, sometimes on Sunday afternoons. And I love playing that sport. That leather ball, that animal hided ball that you're touching of the most beautiful size and texture. And I know all the people, and well, just take my word for it. It's a great thing, and I'm mad about it, and I'm still doing it. And I really want to keep on doing it, and my knees are complaining. I play tennis once a week with a bunch of guys. It's doubles, so that's pretty easy on you. And I have a bad shoulder, but somehow I've learned I can still serve the ball, and I can hit overheads, and I just look after things, and I love playing tennis. And then, there came a time, and what they say. My mother had died when I was young, when I was 30. My dad dies, and now the way is clear for my own death. That's the one that comes next. I was right there with my father when he died. I had one hand on his heart, and my other hand on his neck. He was sitting up in bed. And, I felt his heart stop. Wow, well, maybe that's why I did start thinking more about it. It seems logical, doesn't it? Yeah, my dad dies in my hand. I don't consider death very much, but I consider losing my knees and not being able to play volleyball, etc., etc., etc. And I consider going through that end game. And I'm not big on that, but I don't know how I'm going to focus on that. Here I am, 71, and I'm solitary, as they say. Not very solitary, but I'm not married. And I don't have a girlfriend. And my last girlfriend died in 2007. That's 6.5 years ago. And I haven't had one since. And I always think I'd like to. But then I know that she would drive me crazy. But we're inventing all this stuff, and it's a great adventure. And if we want anything out of our last years, let's keep on having adventures. But the whole thing, wow, as a friend's mother said, well, I've never died before. I don't know what this is going to be like. And see, she was fascinated. That was 2 days before she died. I'll hold that as my ideal.